theme of my new book, The Corruption of Capitalism, which describes how we got into this crisis by abandoning the core principles of economic orthodoxy. Regarding the outlook for the European economy, of course, is a very, very complicated issue. And Europe is not an island. It's part of the global economy. And we now have a worldwide crisis. We have had a global credit bubble. That credit bubble has popped. And so we have to look at the real origin of this global crisis. And the origin of the crisis is in the United States. The United States has been blown into an economic bubble because of its very large trade deficits. The deficits have boomeranged back into the United States, and all that incoming dollars, all those dollars have created a bubble in the United States. Now that bubble has popped, and the government of the United States has had to support the U.S. economy and the global economy through having a 10% of GDP budget deficit. Now, as to how that affects Europe, well, first of all, if the U.S. cannot resolve its crisis, then Europe is doomed anyway, regardless of what happens in Greece. Greece is small change relative on the global scale in terms of the importance of getting the U.S. economy right. The United States can carry on for the next 10 to 15 years, but ultimately, if we don't take steps to restructure the United States economy, 10 to 15 years from now, we'll be in the same position that Greece is in. So there is an opportunity for the United States to take advantage of this 5 to 10 year window of opportunity to spend the money wisely in order to restructure the economy so that it will once again be viable, making the United States economy strong. And a strong U.S. economy means a strong global economy. Whereas, on the other hand, if the United States becomes a Greece and defaults, then we're looking at a kind of fall of Rome scenario globally. And the Dark Ages lasted 1,000 years. So am I pessimistic on the dollar? Well, yes. And my first book was called The Dollar Crisis, because it was clear that the U.S. trade deficit was destabilizing the global economy. The U.S. trade deficit grew to be $2 million a minute in 2006, $800 billion. That was destabilizing the world by creating immense global imbalances. But I think the most significant factor for the global economy is that the U.S. government is spending enough money to keep the United States growing again. This year, the budget deficit will be $1.6 trillion. That's almost 11% of GDP. With all that spending, that's an enormous amount of spending and stimulus. That should ensure that the U.S. economy continues to have positive GDP growth, which means the rest of the world will benefit greatly from the U.S. growth, since the United States is and continues to be the driver of global economic growth. And that's likely to continue.